I've always been able to outthink most situations. It's a consequence of my upbringing, having to outthink and outmaneuver everything in life all the time. It's part of the reason why I've become who I've become in life, and I grew up in a council estate with no money, and now I live this wonderful life where I've got everything I could ever ask for. But when I gave up alcohol, which was my coping mechanism before, because that's what that was, that addiction was a coping mechanism. It was a way of me outsourcing my emotional regulation. Instead of going, oh, okay, I'm feeling scared or helpless or hopeless in some way, I'm just going to drink, because when I drink, all of that goes away.
I'm Olly Hall-Green, and I'm the founder and host of Shapes of Resilience. In this podcast, we explore the raw, unfiltered stories of those who refused to give up, turning adversity into strength, setbacks into lessons, and pain into purpose. Through these inspiring stories, we can learn and find resilience in our own lives every single day, because true growth isn't found in comfort. This podcast discusses sensitive topics including trauma, suicide, loss, mental health, and illnesses. Some conversations may be distressing, so please take care whilst listening. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, bro?
I'm good. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. I'm okay. Like I said to you just now, I've got up this morning, 5 o'clock, did some Jiu-Jitsu, learned how to put on a Kimura. So what are we on now? 10 o'clock. Having a good day, mate.
Nice. Nice. Good effort. I love the discipline. So this morning I am joined by Johnny Lawrence, also known as the self-development coach. And Johnny's someone I've connected with recently through Instagram. And I think Johnny's going to hopefully back me up on this, that we both spotted each other and went, who's that guy? I kind of like what that guy's doing and his message, and it feels aligned. And then there's this really natural, beautiful connection where it was that mutual appreciation for each other with commenting on each other's posts. And then it turned into, like, well, I'm going to share this man's post now. And then it was this, let's do a pod, because Johnny's got a podcast himself. He's got a beautiful story. And I had a really nice sit down on Saturday and watched his documentary, which is really, really powerful. It's his truth, it's authentic, and it brought me to tears twice. And I don't often experience that when I'm watching stuff, because you've always got something on your mind, haven't you, when you sat down watching TV and you might be scrolling. But I thought, no, I'm going to dedicate this half an hour to learning a bit about someone that's going to share his time with me on Monday morning. And his story is one that I believe can give a lot of people hope that listen to this today, because we can use our traumas and our childhood events to do one of two things. We can either use them as an excuse to live our lives in victim mode and using them as a reason to continue with that cycle and self-sabotage and just, not feel valued and not feel enough. Or you can use them to do the exact opposite, which is, it's an ongoing battle, it's an ongoing process, which is what we're going to talk about today. And we've connected and we realize that there's no, like, I've made it now. It is an ongoing process. But I'm hoping that the conversation I'm going to have with Johnny, which we're going to split into two parts, we're going to have episode 1, which we're going to go straight into Johnny's story. We're going to find out everything that he is and his past and the lessons he's learned. And then we're going to go into a second episode, which is a freestyle. So welcome, brother.
Mate, it is an absolute privilege. I think I thought about this over the weekend. I wondered to myself, like, what is it about you that I was drawn to, and potentially you drawn to me? And I do think it's the fact that you are a truth seeker, because that's what I am. And very often when I'm doing any sort of public speaking, I always try to tell people that I'm never here to share advice. I don't have advice for anybody. I'm not that arrogant. I don't believe I have the answers for other people's life. What I do though, is I share perspectives. I share some of my experiences. I share what I concluded from it. I share research at times. And the point of that is to find the truth. And very often people think that my job must be to be right, to convince everyone that I'm super smart and I'm the smartest person in the room and look how clever I am and come and join my cult. And it's not that. It's I'm a student of life too. I'm out there looking for what's true as well. And here's the kicker. Very often, what I find out to be true, I don't really want it to be true. And there's a little bit of resistance there. And there's a little bit of like, oh, I really wish that wasn't true. How can I make it not true? And it's like, no, that's not the game. The game is to accept the truth at some point. And it starts with becoming aware of what it is. And I see that same thing in you. I see you looking for the truth. And then thank you. I want to say thank you, firstly, for this. And secondly, for taking the time over the weekend to watch the documentary. I never take that for granted. You know, it's 45 minutes of your life. And the idea of that documentary, although, yes, I'm talking about my childhood experiences and my adult experiences with addiction, what I am trying to do is share a story that provokes emotions that everybody has. Those feelings, you know, everybody wants to show up as the best version of themselves, and Instagram doesn't help that. But that's not how it really is. We're always those little kids that are pretending to be grown-ups, right?
You did that very well, and I think that is the reason why it triggered me and I became emotional, because you speak in such language that does invite the listener to reflect on their own lives. And there were certainly similarities to some of your upbringing, not to the extent of the way the people that were there to look after you, or your father especially, was the way he treated you. Like, I can't understand that, because that wasn't my childhood. But you do it in such a way that, and we've spoke about this, that the actual detail isn't the important bit. It's how we can relate to others and use their strength to actually, like, you take that and then it becomes your strength.
Yeah. The fundamental thing about self-development is a lot of the time people think that self-development, the hardest bit, is to develop yourself and to do the things that you don't usually do, whatever it is. Even if something as simple as going on a diet, like showing up every day and doing the diet is hard, or going to the gym it's hard, or giving up smoking, or whatever it is. Actually, the hardest part of self-development, in my opinion, is giving up the person that you are now. That's really difficult, because whether you like that person or not, they've kept you safe, they've kept you okay, whatever you want to call it, for a really, really long time. And giving that up is a breakup. There's a grieving process to that is bordering on unbearable. So guess what? People don't have to do it, so they don't. And that makes total sense to me, you know?
My least favorite part of self-development, and you summed it up perfectly, is I might like the version of myself I was 2 months ago, because that person there had worked it out. That was cool. I like that person. But then I found some more truth, didn't like that bit, and now I feel sad again. And then I know tomorrow there's constantly an evolution, and sometimes it feels like you're going backwards. But I do believe that even when we go backwards, we're still only doing that to make sense of the truth. And then you bounce back, and you always bounce back, and you become stronger, better, and just more alive each and every time.
There's a quote: no person steps in the same river twice, because it's never the same river and it's never the same person. And that is a powerful quote, and it's something that I always bear in mind, especially when I'm working with clients. Because if I'm doing my job right, what I'm doing is I'm shaking up the snow globe every time they come in, and I'm unearthing stuff, and I'm challenging stuff, and I'm stirring stuff, and I'm making it. I'm not doing any work. I'm just stirring. I'm creating the catalyst, the need for change. And if I've done my job right and I see them again in 2 weeks' time, what I have to be really careful of is, although I know this person, I have to be careful not to treat them like they were last time. Because what I'm doing in that moment is inadvertently cueing them to be the same person. When actually what's really exciting about my job is that I don't know who's going to show up. And I sit there and I wait, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've never said that before. They're really curious today, or they're really shut down today, or they're really whatever today. It all means something. And my job is to be a bit of an emotional investigator and go, this is interesting. I'm not gonna apply what I think it means. I'm just gonna sit and see what happens. It's a great job.
Makes a lot of sense. And I love like analogies, and I had this vision of you almost like pulling someone out of the sea when they're swimming, like say the English Channel, and they're swimming, and you're there. You just pull them out, have your little coaching session with them, but then you put them back in and carry on swimming. Like you change the course or stop swimming.
Hopefully I put them back in a better place.
Put them back, put them back in with a bit more strength, a bit more awareness, a bit more self-belief. And then those strokes that were feeling completely overwhelming, all of a sudden the strokes tidied up a little bit, and you're using the right amount of energy to mean that you're far more likely to get to the other side.
Mate, the truth of it is that I don't think there are any human beings that don't go through a version of something happens in their life and it's so unbearable, so horrible, so difficult, so challenging, whatever that is to them. And people have different types of life, but it's not about the event, it's about the experience that they're having and the emotions that they're having. But people have these events that happen in their life and they impact them in such a way that they're presented with a choice. They get to accept their new reality, life after the event, or they work really hard to find a version of reality or a narrative that they can accept. And then what they do is they show that version to the world, almost like a tester. And whoever buys it, they're my new friend, because I need them to reflect to me that all the time so I can believe it too. And then what happens is every now and again we get around people that are looking at you, like usually old friends or family members or whatever, and they're like, what? No. And you'll get cross and you'll get angry at them. You know, no, stop it. I need to believe this. I want to believe that. It's not true though. And this is why we connect, because unfortunately we found that ultimately helpful things in life happen from leaning into the truth. And if something good happens coming from a lie, it's always temporary. And at some point you meet that lie and it is catastrophic. It is always very painful. And part of that pain is that you know that you wasn't telling yourself the truth. And it doesn't make you a bad person. You know, I understand why people do it. Like I said, the truth is so unbearable and so difficult to hear, to experience, to accept, that we just choose not to. To me, that makes perfect sense, you know? And sometimes we need a bit of help with that, you know? Gambling, drugs, alcohol, an affair. We need something to channel that into so that we can just manage the emotions that come up. Because our emotions are how our soul makes requests. That's what our emotions are. They're never wrong. They might have the wrong information. It's a bit like a calculator, right? You put the wrong numbers in, you get the wrong answer. And our emotions are always going to give us the answer based on what we've put in. And they're there to signal us. They are a message. They're there to tell us, listen to me. I'm trying to tell you something. There's something you should focus on. There's something you need to explore a bit further. And we're like, no. Because if I explore that, I might find this out and I don't want to. It's like, cool.
So on that note, let's go back to the start. Let's go back to 8-year-old Johnny, and on that exact theme we were just talking about. If you can go back to that time and what was going on in Johnny's head and what were the signals and how did that mean he interpreted the world at that time?
I think through therapy and through self-reflection, I think I lived in fear all the time. But here's the thing, I don't know that I knew I was in fear. So I just thought that was who I was. I was a scared, weak, fearful person. I didn't even have that language for it. It's part of the problem when it comes to demanding that men or people talk about their feelings. Sometimes we don't have the language for that. We don't know how to, you know? So I've spent all of my time in fear, scared all of the time. And I had every good reason to be completely honest. As I say in the documentary, fundamentally, not that I like to blame, I'm just stating observations at this point. I was let down by pretty much every aspect of my life. You know, I was at the time I was obviously at school, and being at school, I come to find out when I was 30 years old that I have dyslexia. But back in the 80s, I was just thick. That's just what I was. I was just thick. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I was making it really hard work for the teachers. They didn't like that. You know, didn't have any money, come from a very poor background. So I wasn't a very big person. I was very, very, very small and skinny and wasn't very much of an athlete. So, and because I didn't have any money, I was kind of bullied. You know, people didn't really want to be my friend, you know, so my schooling life was pretty miserable. You know, I was in every aspect, I was thick, I was unathletic, I was all these things. great.
Trainers was it, wasn't it? Trainers was currency.
Oh, yeah.
Had Nike Air Max or Reebok Classics. You were one of the cool kids, and I can relate to certain parts of what you're saying, because as I said to you before, my dad was a fisherman, and some weeks he'd go out and come back, and because of the lack of fish, I know sometimes he'd come back and they wouldn't have ended up catching much at all. So as the provider for the house, he was out there doing his absolute best for us, and through no fault of his own, he would come back sometimes empty-handed, I imagine, and that meant that sometimes it was hard for my parents. But from my point of view, I've got nothing but like more love and respect and admiration for them, even though I might not have had the coolest trainers. Like, looking back, that doesn't matter, because I know they did their absolute best. It's hard, but yeah, the whole trainers thing was the currency, wasn't it, back in the 80s?
Yeah, I didn't get my first pair of Nike Air Max until I was well into my like late 20s, maybe even later than that. Don't know. Because I never was able to afford those things. I suppose I never built a relationship with them being important. Never really. If we ever meet in person, you'll quickly realise I'm not really a clothes person. You won't see me with the latest fashion. No, I'm not really that type of guy.
So because of the other stuff that was going on at home and the fear you had there, do you feel like you didn't really have time or energy to actually care about other kids who got better trainers than me? And do you remember that being a thought?
Yeah, it just wasn't an option. It was something I could do anything about. It's that combination of going to school and it being misery, being bullied, and the teachers didn't like me, the kids didn't like me. That's what it felt like anyway. That was hard. That was really hard. It made me feel pretty worthless, and I felt pretty rejected when I was at school. And then I go home and I have a similar experience at home. My dad was very, very violent, and there were very unreasonable things that would kick him off. It would be things like using too much toilet roll, leaving windows open, lights on, eating too many packets of crisps, or whatever it is. He would go mad and start hurting people, and it would just be he had no self-control, and I can only look back and analyze it now as an adult and see that he'd had no control over himself at all. He was like an animal, rage-filled animal. People find this hard to hear, but I do have some empathy and compassion for him, because he was born in Nigeria into poverty and violence himself. He would very often speak about how lucky we was, because back in his day, he would get pulled out into the village and publicly flogged in front of the whole village until he was bleeding. And in some way, he felt that meant we were lucky. But when I stop for a moment and not make it about me, and I think about him, and I think how hard I've found life for a really long time, and even sometimes now, how hard must it have been for him? And I think, I'm sure we'll get onto this later, but very often when it comes to developing ourselves, we have to develop relationships with other people, regardless of what that means, relationships romantically or through work. And what that then means is that sometimes we're at the mercy of other people's emotions, right? One of the reasons that we develop ourselves is so we can cope with in a way. But we get stuck in these patterns, these traps of who's to blame. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done that. Who's to blame? It's your fault. You should do this. You should do that to show that you're sorry, to get over whatever's going on. I need this. I need that. And that's okay. That's fair to demand that. But very often that person isn't willing or isn't capable of those things. So then what does that mean? That means that we stay in this perpetual state of being at the mercy of waiting for them to do what you need them to do. Be very reasonable of me to say, I want my father to show some sort of repent, some sort of, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have treated you that way. It was a mistake. I regret it. I always will. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. That would be great. He's never going to do that. He's just not. No. I don't know why. My suspicion is that he's not capable of it. Doesn't know how. He's so caught up in his own pain, in his own destruction, that he's not even aware he's painful and destructive, that he's just living his life. So what does that mean for me? That means that if I become obsessed with waiting for him to do the right thing, well, that leaves me stuck too, right? So that's why it's important to me to look at it from his position. Because if I do that, if I have that compassion, if I have that empathy and try and understand his position, it doesn't mean he's like, oh, it's all forgiven. It doesn't mean that, that makes it okay. It just helps me go, okay, right. So actually, it wasn't about me. You didn't do those things because you hate me. You didn't do those things because I'm a bad person, which is the meaning I put to it in the beginning. You did those things because you didn't have a choice. You just did them because you're acting out all of your pain and anger and rage. You are completely out of control. You're not willing to look at any of the difficult things at all. You're just an animal. Cool. That means that I can just leave that with you then and offer a pop. You know? And that's the lesson I learned from that. You know, I go to school, I have all that. I come home, I have all that. And then growing up in the 80s, as I said in the documentary, mixed race kid, good time. A lot of fear in race around that time, as there is now, I suppose. But back then, you know, if you were mixed race, half Nigerian, half white English, what were you? Well, you were too black to be white. You were too white to be black. We'll just push you out to the side. So rejection on all fronts was a real good time.
Man, that sounds so tough. Like, I can't comprehend how hard that must have been for you, feeling like you literally had. I mean, did you have anyone in your friendship group that was in a similar position, or was it just yourself?
I lived in a neighborhood where, and I think you have to speak to the fact that it was the 80s and there was a lot more domestic violence that police officers were unable to help with, or anyone was unable to help with. There was this sort of unspoken rule, I suppose, that you don't step between a man and his wife and his family. So men were able to freely do whatever they wanted, you know, and that's what we saw a lot of in varying degrees in my neighborhood. But, you know, I've had Nigerian friends, and we talk about some of the things that Nigerian parents do. There's a lot of talk around getting the wooden spoon and getting flogged and all these different things. And we laugh about it because it's like a shared experience and it's like something we all have in common. It's not funny, but we laugh about it anyway. But this is where it changes for me slightly, is that my dad took it to a very sadistic level. He would use a lot of psychological and physical violence. And what I mean by that is sometimes something would happen and he would say it was going to hurt me, but I wouldn't know when. Bear in mind, I'm 8 or below. So I'm wet in the bed at night, sat in my bed at night, terrified, waiting for my dad to come. I hear him get up to go to the loo. He's forgotten about it. He just wanted me to live in a state of fear. You know, and that's what happened. I lived in a state of fear. I was constantly waiting for it. And then sometimes he would just randomly remember, come into the room and say, it's time for your beating. And I'd be like, wait, what beating? It's something that happened 3 days ago. You just forgot, you know? So it wasn't really, for me, a lot of that stuff was like compartmentalized and put into sort of compartments in my mind so that I didn't go near it. And so consequently, that led to an addiction as a way to, you know, as you go up and the context of life changes and more responsibility comes along, life keeps nudging you to look at these things that you probably should look at. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to drink beer instead, or wine or whatever. But it wasn't until I got to therapy and I started talking to my therapist about some problems I was having. And that was all due to my incredible wife, who could see that I was struggling with depression and encouraged me to go. And anyway, I got talking to the therapist and the therapist was crying. And I was like, what's this about? I'd never been to therapy before. I wasn't sure if this is normal. I had an inkling it wasn't. And she said, I'm very sorry. And I was thinking to myself, is this unprofessional? And she explained it to me very well. She said, you know, I'm only human. I have emotions. And what I'm hearing is a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy who's absolutely terrified and is being tortured. And that was the first time I ever heard that word. I was like, tortured? What do you mean? And she explained to me what torture was, and she explained to me some of the things it had done. And she just said, but when you talk about this, you talk about it like it's a film you watched on TV. You're completely disconnected from it. You have no realization that that was you. And I was just like, I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, I don't know what that means. But it stirred something up in me. And I was feeling this rising. And this is something I've been pushing down for a very long time. And it scared the life out of me. And I couldn't wait to get out of that room. And I went home. And for the first time, and I don't say this because I'm trying to be a tough guy, I had a very difficult relationship with tears. There was times when my father would beat me and I would cry. And then he would beat me till I stopped crying. So I had this really complicated relationship with tears. And actually, when you think about crying, it's an interesting thing. And I don't know that many people think about it very much, but crying is this incredible instinctive system within our body where it dissipates emotion. Like, we don't choose it.
No.
Whether we cry or not, we have that feeling. Even the toughest of guys that you may never see cry, they want to. They're watching a program and the dog's dying and they're feeling the emotions, but they're pushing them down. But isn't it interesting how there's an instinct to cry when we feel emotions? There's an instinct to cry. Like this morning, me and my wife, our eyes were welling up because we watched this Instagram video of a teacher teaching a class of kids, and she farts, and all the kids start laughing. And she's laughing and they're all laughing. It was just the most infectious laughter of all these kids. And this teacher's utterly embarrassed. And me and my wife are like welling up just because it's so lovely to see.
Yeah.
You know? So those emotions, that crying and then welling up of the eyes, it comes whether you want it to or not. You know, and I had shut that off completely.
So would you say somebody that's able to cry regularly, whether it's through sadness or through happiness, if you feel yourself feeling such emotions that it brings you to tears, would you say that's actually someone that's in quite a healthy emotional state, that they're able to connect with those emotions to that level and release them? And then and it doesn't actually hold, you don't hold on to it. It's like a temporary thing. Because I find myself doing that. And I ask myself the question, with the crying, it's something that over the last few months, it's been, I've cried a lot, unfortunately, and it kind of takes a lot for me to admit that. It's especially on my podcast, but I've kind of got to the point in life where I don't feel like I've got much to hide, and I feel very, very passionately actually about how the whole male suicide thing is such a focal point at the moment, and I feel like unless people that have any kind of platform that are able to help and are able to share how they truly feel and what emotions they go through, I feel like you're almost missing the opportunity to truly help people by not being completely honest.
Yeah. And I think the important thing about what you just said there was, even if you're not fully doing it, you're definitely beginning to do it. And that is the important part of crying, of any of it, is being able to validate your emotions. And I think the problem we have these days is that we experience an emotion which is immediately met by, I don't feel that way, or I shouldn't feel that way, or I'm not going to feel that way, or I'm going to fight that emotion. Yeah, just, you know, guys aren't going to admit their emotions, women aren't going to admit their emotions, people are taking copious amounts of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication that shuts that part of the emotional experience down, and then we become further and we think it's helping. The right question is, what's causing me to cry? But instead we go, I shouldn't cry. I'm going to try not to cry, which is really difficult. Maybe I need some drugs. I'll take some drugs. Now I'm not crying. So now we're not getting, it's like pain, right? When something hurts, it's trying to tell us there's something wrong and we need to look at it. And that's what the crying's about, is trying to say there's something here in your life that you're not paying attention to and you should do. Or somewhere in your life that you feel a bit helpless. Maybe you're fully aware of the problem, but you're not able to do anything about it right now. And that's really frustrating, especially for a strong bloke like you, because you are a strong bloke. I can tell. I can look at you and I know that you're a strong bloke. So somewhere in this situation is probably quite likely.
I don't believe you. It's like, and I'm not saying I don't believe that you believe that, but
yeah,
I don't feel that myself. I really don't. And I look at other men and I feel that, I don't know, you feel envious of other men, that you feel have got it together.
What is it you feel envious of?
Put on a bit more of a front, because I don't feel like I'm very good at hiding my emotions. And I feel like I'm just this open book that if I feel pissed off and if I'm not feeling great, that I'm not able to hide that and just navigate through a little get together. I feel like I go inwards quite quickly. And then as soon as I've done that and the negative self-talk's there, it's game over. Like, you may as well just write the day off.
But we have a mental health crisis amongst men.
Mm.
Why do you think that is? It's because they're not validating their emotions. So that thing that you're envious of, where people, and you even said they could put on a front, which means that it's not them. It's not them. So they go to a situation and they're like, right, I must be tough. That sounds exhausting. That sounds exhausting when one of your kids isn't well. That sounds exhausting when you're having trouble at home with the relationship with your missus or whatever. That sounds exhausting when you're not sure if you're going to keep your job. That sounds exhausting when you're having a really big bust up with your mate and he means a lot to you and you can't seem to see the middle ground. These things that happen in our life, these events, these things that are important to us, and we keep telling ourselves that we've got to show up a certain way instead of just being honest. I remember once I was working with a couple that were going through a really hard time, and one of them was basically gone out of the relationship and cheated. But they loved each other and they really wanted to make it work. And I believed them. I think that they did. Anyway, there were lots of components to repairing that relationship, but one of them was building trust. The main one was building trust. And there was a certain amount of time went down the line, and the person that had cheated in that relationship wanted to go away with some friends. And the person that had been cheated on was understandably nervous about that. And they said, I can't do it. I can't let that happen. And I made the point, how is somebody supposed to build trust if you don't put them in situations where they need to be trusted? They didn't love that, but they got it. And then quietly, I got a message a bit later on going, but what if they cheat again? And then they said, then you have your answer. I know you don't want them to. I know that you don't want them to, but taking away the opportunity doesn't change that. They're capable of it, that they're willing to do it, that there's an issue going on there that they need to deal with, you know? And that's the thing here. What I'm trying to say is that we have to face the truth, whether we want to or not. And I totally get, to me, that's a good example. That person was trying to construct a life where they didn't have the opportunity to cheat. Well, then that doesn't solve the problem, does it? Because they shouldn't want to. And when people cheat, largely it's because something is not functioning in their relationship. That person has a need that the other person's not fulfilling anymore, and they found a way of fulfilling that need elsewhere. So focus on that instead, you know? But instead they're like, no, I'm going to make this person a prisoner. I don't think making someone a prisoner is ever going to help any situation ever, you know? So see what happens to us, and we double down. And this is a good example of what men do. We find a way to not have our emotions. Everybody around us is comfortable with that. They show us that, yeah, that's that. I like that. Keep doing that, because it then doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, and you're a lot of fun, and oh, you're drinking too much, but you're a laugh, and all this sort of stuff. And you find yourself being that performer, and it's exhausting because you don't always want to perform, right? Some days you just want to cry, or just be angry, or just have an emotion of some kind, but you're not allowed, because you've created this life where you've basically screwed yourself. You know, you've got to show up in every aspect of your life as this person. And if you don't, we're going to shame you. We're going to tell you it's not good enough. You're going to feel rejection. You're going to feel all these difficult emotions, you know? And this is why, for me, the ultimate message, if I was to be presenting anything out in the world, is find out what's true. That's it. Find out what's true. You never have to think too hard to know what's true, you know. You don't have to sit around lying and think about what you said. And this is why, good and bad, I always tell the truth now. Sometimes I tell lies without knowing. I just didn't have the truth. I thought I had the truth, you know, but I'll always admit to that. Oh, I thought that was true. Now I realize it isn't.
It's finding the environments as well to trust the truth that you're finding. So for me, the thing that's changed my life the most is the ocean. So I swim regularly in the cold all year round in a pair of shorts. And whenever I've got something on my mind or a decision to make, or I'm trying to process some unclear emotions or direction, I go to the ocean, strip down into my shorts and just wade out. I don't swim. I just allow the freezing cold sea to wrap around my body, and I'll just drift. But what I'll do whilst I'm there is I'll make sense of whatever it is that's going on. And because it's so cold and I'm feeling like the tingling sensation of the ocean, and I might be getting some waves and I'm catching my breath and staying afloat, then what happens is my ego completely dies and I can feel it. So there's not one part of my body that cares at that point what someone's going to think of this decision I've now realized in my mind. And then I get out, move forward with my life, make the decisions that I made whilst I'm out in the ocean. And I always trust that person. And I might not like it, and I might have so many times after I've made the decision in the ocean that I want to go back on it. But I know that that's just my ego creeping in. And I go, no, listen to that guy out there in the sea, because he's a good guy, and he's got your back, and he actually comes up with the most sense that anyone could ever give you.
Mate, that is the best example I've heard about wrestling with your ego. You see, ego is amazing, right? I'm not going to sit there and tell you that ego is a bad thing. It's not. Everybody needs an ego. Everyone's got an ego, whether we admit to it or not. I think sometimes ego gets confused with arrogance. It's not arrogance. Ego is our protection mechanism.
Yeah.
And very often it speaks in other people's voices. And an ego's sole purpose is to justify its own existence. That's it. And what it's always going to do is it's always going to gravitate us towards comfort and away from discomfort. And it does that through the means of familiarity. What's familiar to us? That's why people stay in abusive relationships, because they're familiar, they're predictable. And unpredictability is anxiety. That's all it is. It's the fear of the unknown. At least I know how to navigate this situation at home. And the ego, there's this thing called an ego death. Not sure if you've come across it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you do in very small doses, because the ego isn't a bad thing. It's trying to tell you that it's okay to stay in your job. It's okay to stay in that relationship. It's okay to keep doing what you're doing. It's all right. You're coping. You're managing. You're okay. You're okay. Stop making waves. Stop being dramatic. All this language that he uses, probably your parents' language, probably somebody else that's important to use language, whatever. But actually, what it does is it stands directly in front of what you want. Because here's another thing about that relationship I was talking about earlier. One of the things that the person that was cheated on kept saying was, how can I stay in this relationship after everything that's happened? People are going to think this, people are going to think that. And to me, it very much felt like that person was looking for permission to stay in a relationship. And what that did was it completely bypassed one thing. What do you want? They both wanted to stay in this relationship, and they were like two hurt kids that just didn't know how to make it work. And what I did is I became the mediator in between. I became the emotional translator. So when one was getting angry, I would look behind the anger and say, actually, that's not anger, that's fear. That's not anger, that's helplessness. That's not anger, that's inadequacy. Whatever it is. And then once they saw it as that, they'd be like, why do you feel inadequate? And they would ask the right questions, and they'd move towards the right answers, you know? And what that is this getting behind the ego. So like I said, I've never heard such a beautiful analogy for allowing your ego to fall away. You become so cold that your ego just says, you're on your own, bruh. And then the real you says, okay, now I can hear you.
But it's the only reason I'm sat here today with you, because prior to starting the sea swimming, I had this thing inside me that was like I don't know, I hadn't even began to unravel what it was I was looking at doing moving forward. But the sea swimming is the only thing that allowed me to actually have the courage to put my message out there and record some videos and do the podcast. And even this morning, prior to this podcast, I woke up feeling quite not sorry for myself, but I felt like there wasn't a lot of self-love. So, yeah, I had to go for a sea swim this morning to get myself into the right frame of mind to maybe just shed some of the stuff I was holding on to that wasn't particularly helpful. And then by the time I'd done that and had a nice drink of coffee this morning, sat out in the garden, just looking out and reflecting on some of the things I'm grateful for, then all of a sudden it was just in time. And I just caught it maybe 15, 20 minutes before the podcast, where I was doing a bit of breath work, and everything started to feel nice, because I hate doing these podcasts and not feeling good in myself, because I feel like then it becomes a bit of a game of masking how you're actually feeling. So I feel like how I'm speaking now is true to how I feel, which there's a lot of self-reflection there and a lot of working through different emotions and kind of riding a bit of a wave at the moment, because we had the connection on Friday and sat down for a 15-minute introduction call that took 60 minutes. I was looking forward to it. Like, that was the overwhelming feeling I had, was that I was actually genuinely excited and grateful to sit down with you.
I felt the same way. I mean, what changed? What changed in that? So you go to the sea. As you were walking towards the ocean, you were feeling a certain way. And then when you walked away, you were feeling different. What was the change?
If I recall how I was feeling when I was just getting ready to go in the ocean, I almost started to feel a little bit excited about the person I was going to be when I came out, because I didn't feel happy. Yeah, I didn't feel happy going down for the sea swim. I felt just confused at the moment, to be honest, because I'm going through these transitions, and there's things like my daughter's going through changes in different schools, and they're growing up, and it's just a natural thing, really, for me at the moment. I'm just feeling uncertain. There's lots of unknowns, lots of pressures, mortgage going up, all these things where you're like, how am I going to pay the bills? And patience with doing the podcast and believing in that I'm doing it for the right reasons. But at the same time, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of sacrifice away from the family. So yeah, you've got to juggle everything up and think, well, actually, whilst my kids are in that transition age, is it fair for me to spend lots and lots of time doing a podcast? It's difficult. But going back to your question, how I felt when I got out of the ocean, it's a transformation every single time, without fail, because I use it in exactly the same way, where I'll drift out. And today it was quite rough, which was good. Like, the waves were quite hard, battering the pebbles. It's not a sandy beach. It looked a little bit emotional before I got in, but I thought that's exactly what I need, because I just let the waves just do their thing with me and just swallowed a bit of water. And I reflect it to the book I read on holiday earlier this year, Stillness is the Key, by Ryan Holiday. And it talks about what stillness is. And one of the analogies it uses is a stone in the waves getting battered by the ocean. And that stillness is actually accepting that you are that stone, and that by letting go of your ego and you become the stone, that you know that the waves will hit you. You know that will be uncomfortable at the time, but you know that once the waves stop and the sea becomes calm again, that you're still the same stone. So that's how I feel when I'm in the ocean.
Interestingly enough, that's exactly the conclusion I was going to come to. It sounds to me like getting in the ocean helps you accept how you feel.
It's acceptance, yeah.
It's acceptance. Listen, I would love to go back and change my past. I really would. More so the things I had to see. You know, my dad hurting my sister, my mum, my brothers. That was hard. In a way, I'm okay. I'm tough enough to put up with the pain of being hurt. But watching my younger than me siblings get hurt was weird. That's the stuff that keeps me awake. That's the stuff that I have the PTSD over. Just remembering the sounds that they used to make when they were getting hurt. That was difficult. So I can't go back and change those events. So the only way to really deal with, and it's not something that's going to be very popular to hear, because it's not easy to do. And sometimes you undo it for a bit because you're angry or whatever, but you have to learn to accept how you feel. But the hardest part about that is you don't want to feel like that. So why on earth would you accept it? But there is a little game I play with myself. There's this thing called primary and secondary emotions. And what that is, in essence, is that primary emotions, I always have them listed on a piece of paper here. There was a psychologist, researcher called Emma McAdam, and she makes the statement that there are 8 primary emotions that are the main focal points of emotional experiences. They are disappointment, fear, helplessness, hopelessness, joy, inadequacy, sadness, and vulnerability. Sometimes when we have these emotions, they are so impossible feeling that we just don't want to have them. They are emotions about an event. They are the most sensitive experience that we can have. And we're like, nah, not going to feel helpless, not going to feel vulnerable, not going to feel inadequacy, not going to be scared. I know I'll be angry instead. Or I'll be one of these emotions, frustrated, or whatever it is. They're going to have another emotion because those emotions are secondary emotions. And what those emotions are, they're emotions about emotions. They're really easy to have. Being angry makes me feel really empowered. I can swear at people and shout and throw stuff and I feel like I'm in control. But it's an illusion. It's a way of bypassing how you really feel. And because you were so kind and so brave in sharing how you really felt, vulnerable, which is one of the primary emotions, I was able to hear another emotion in there, and that's helplessness. And like I said, you're a strong guy. Making a strong guy helpless, there you go. You've just found his kryptonite. You don't want to be helpless. You want to do stuff. You want to feel empowered. You want to control all the situations, or at least have a sense of control, but you don't. And then what that ocean does is it becomes a physical experience of how you are really feeling in your own head. And you sit in it and you endure it and you come out and you survive it. And it becomes evidence for you that you are resilient and you are tough and that you can put up with this situation. You're okay. You're all right. Because sometimes we need it. Like you just said, I can tell you all day long how tough you are. You can believe me. Put yourself in the ocean and then come out. You can't deny it because it was rough this morning.
Yeah. So what's your equivalent of the ocean?
Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
It's
when
jiu-jitsu.
Did that start then? So talk to me about jiu-jitsu.
I've always been quite a cerebral person. I've always been able to outthink most situations. It's a consequence of my upbringing, having to outthink and outmaneuver everything in life all the time. It's part of the reason why I've become who I've become in life. And I grew up in a council estate with no money, and now I live this wonderful life where I've got everything I could ever ask for. But when I gave up alcohol, which was my coping mechanism before, because that's what that was, that addiction was a coping mechanism. It was a way of me outsourcing my emotional regulation. Instead of going, oh, okay, I'm feeling scared or helpless or hopeless in some way, I'm just going to drink, because when I drink, all of that goes away and I don't have to think about it. And then the next day, however I'm feeling will be laced by a hangover anyway, so it won't matter, you know? And we go on and we go on. When I gave up my coping mechanism, I was left with the emotions. And I spent a very long time intellectualizing those emotions, you know, trying to understand them, trying to process them, trying to apply logic to them. But here's the trick and here's the trap. Good luck applying logic to emotions because they don't follow that law. They don't give a shit. They really don't care. What they care about is doing the emotion. If you're going to be disappointed, good luck applying because we can be disappointed about things that aren't logical, right? Yeah. Absolutely. We could absolutely be, and then worse still, you share that disappointment with somebody, which kind of passes it over to them. They get a bit annoyed at you. Oh, well, I'm sorry that your disappointment, and now we're angry. You know, and that's how it goes. So, for a very long time, I intellectualized. I went to the mountains, which was I'd go to the mountains and I'd meet myself. I'd meet fear head on. So my biggest nemesis in life, I said it to you earlier, is fear. I lived in victimhood of fear for about 25 years. And what I did when I stopped drinking was I kept having experiences of fear all the time. And it wasn't until my therapist, again, very emotionally, they said, it's interesting. You said that you're weak and scared, but actually what I see is bravery because you're still doing it. And that's when I realized that, you know, the main component to being brave is fear. Otherwise you're not being brave, right? No. So then I went up into the mountains and I would go up there and I'd meet fear head on, right, look it in the eyes. And I'd come out with whatever I come out with. And then that would last for a little while. And then I'd go back to the mountains again and top it up. After a little while, I started realizing, like, I don't know how sustainable this is. I started dragging my kids up hills and all sorts of stuff, and they loved it. But at the same time, it was like, it was different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I went to Kilimanjaro at the beginning of the year, went up there on this celebrity walk thing. Not that I'm a celebrity, but I was with some celebrities, and that's relevant. And it's relevant because it added another level of fear to the already fearful thing I was doing, being around celebrities, cameras being around, all sorts of stuff like that. It was all very intimidating and very difficult. And I got to 5,000 meters and I started getting altitude sickness. And I said it was bad. It was a real bad one. I had really low blood oxygen levels. I had a pounding head, a banging heartbeat. I could actually see my heart beating. It was that powerful. I was projectile vomiting out this tent. But yet there was a part of me, it sounds ridiculous now, but there was a part of me that it wasn't that I was trying. I genuinely didn't think that was the end. I was like, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to get to the top, obviously. And everyone's like, not sure that's what's going to happen. But anyway, the leader comes over to me, starts to talk, and I said, stop. Let me try. And he just looked at me and he went, okay. I'm a grown up. Can't stop me. Nice. So he's like, okay. And the doctor's like looking at him and he's like, what can I do? So 11 o'clock at night, we start walking up this hill and I am struggling. Now I haven't eaten either. Yeah, so I'm walking up. I've been sick. I've got a pounding head, banging heart rate, feeling really, really unwell. I haven't eaten, haven't got any energy. And I'm walking up and my ego's going, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. Go on, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And then the leader turns around and says, Johnny, how's trying going? And I just looked at him and I went, and he went, let me put it another way. Can you do this for another 11 hours? I went, huh? And he said, that's right, 11 hours. We're leaving now at 11 o'clock. We're going to get to the top at 7 a.m. this morning. Then we've got to get back down again. And I just looked at him and I'm not going to lie, that broke me a bit. And I was a little bit like, I can't answer that. If I'm a truth seeker, I tell the truth. I can't answer that question honestly by saying, yeah, I can do that. So I just looked at him and he looked at me and he went, you've been an absolute rock on this trip. He goes, this is your summit. And I was just like, okay, yep, right. So am I going down? And he was like, yeah. And I started going down and I get some of the guides they took me down to the tent. And I sat in the tent. This is all relevant, I promise. I sat in the tent and I thought, okay, what's going to happen? Got my head torch on. I'm on my own now. They've left me alone. I sat there and I'm like, right, am I going to cry? I just started laughing. Honestly, I started having this like hysterical laughter. And the more I laughed, the more I wanted to laugh. And I was like, why am I laughing? What's going on? And I realized something. For the first time in my life, I realized something that was really important. I had just faced my real fear. See, I thought my fear was going to the top of that mountain, facing altitude sickness, facing weather, facing darkness, facing pain, facing all of those things. Do you know what? I've become quite good at doing that. I can do that pretty much all day long, if I'm honest. The hardest fear for me was walking back down that bloody hill having failed. Having to go back to my boys all excited. Dad, did you get to the top? No, I didn't, boys. No, I failed. Oh, we sponsored you. How did you get on? No, I didn't get to the top. All of that, I wasn't having any of it. I was like, nope, can't do it. That was my real fear. So the irony of that is, walking up that hill, I thought I was being brave, but actually it was walking back down was bravery. Now, how does this coincide to you?
That makes so much sense. That really makes a lot of sense.
It didn't to me at the time until I sat there with it. But how does that relate to jiu-jitsu? Well, I can hear some of the lads at the gym mugging me off if they hear this. I was scared of it. I didn't want to walk in there and be the weakest guy in the room.
That's me now.
Well, yeah.
But I've got a lot of friends that do it, and I'm like, I've done it a handful of times, maybe 6 years ago. I love the idea of it. My fitness is on point. I'm lean. I feel like I've got the right kind of level of, I don't know, acceptance that these people are going to school me, and I'm happy with that. But there's still part of me that's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're trying to trick. You're not happy with being this.
It's the
It
ego.
looks like he could handle himself, maybe. Is just going to be awful and use all of the wrong energy and try and do it with strength and all this kind of stuff. So I can relate to that a lot.
Well, that's exactly, and I'm still there, if I'm honest. Like every single, like when I do jiu-jitsu, I can't describe it to you. It's everything I've been looking for.
Nice.
When I'm doing it. But getting up this morning, I got up at 5 o'clock. I was up from probably about 3 with anxiety about it.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's not logical. Let's not try and apply logical.
It is logical.
I had anxiety.
That's how I feel all the time. Like when I used to box, I used to love the feeling of being there, but I used to get so nervous, especially like when I used to compete. I only had 3 bouts, but like that emotion, that anxiety.
Only had 3 bouts. One's enough, mate. Yeah. Like anyone that gets in the boxing ring, legend. It is horrible, yeah.
And I made the mistake on my first bout of taking my dad and my dad's friend and about 7 friends down to the Lympston boxing show down in Exmouth, which is predominantly Marines boxing. So there's these big groups of Marines all stood around warming up together, and I was just on my own with my coach. And I just wanted the world to swallow me up, because all I had, this feeling was, I could be at home right now watching EastEnders, because I was quite into EastEnders at the time. But I was there and I was going to be one of the last on as well, and I hadn't eaten, all these things. But compete in any kind of competitive sport where you're putting yourself on the line, it takes a hell of a lot.
But that's why that post that you put out the other day really resonated with me, because the truth of it is, exactly as you just said, you didn't have to be there. You could be at home. And that's when we start to collect evidence that we're not what our ego is telling us. You know, like we are, like I would love to say that I just got up at 5 o'clock this morning, hard as nails, got my bag with my gi in, drove up to the gym, got in there, was like, let's have it, lads.
Black belt, like,
yeah. I'd love to tell that story, but it would be bollocks, you know. But the truth of it is, I was anxious, and I'm in there, and it's humbling. It's very humbling. Like I was running around with a black belt today, and he was teaching me how to put Kimuras on. And I was in a bout with him afterwards, and I was trying to put that Kimura on, and I could tell that there was a part of him letting me, which I hated, you know. So and I was just rolling with him, and I couldn't get the thing on. And then he said to me afterwards, "He wasn't working my grip. You need to put your weight on top of my arm, and then get under and start working the grip." Because he was holding on to his gi, so I couldn't quite get it. And it's all of that. What I've come to realize about it now is that nobody cares. And it's the best piece of advice ever I ever got. And it's the bad news is nobody cares. The good news is nobody cares. Nobody cares. Is Johnny coming today? Nobody cares. Oh, Johnny's here. Nobody cares. Johnny's not feeling himself today. He's hurt his back. Don't care. No. Johnny's on full form, really strong. Don't care. They don't care. No one cares. No one's watching me. They're all having their own battle. They're all having their own battle with their own anxiety.
That thing of, oh, but what if Johnny taps me out or I tap Johnny out? Like, not only does nobody care, but they're probably not even going to tell anyone anyway. So even if they did tell someone, that person still wouldn't care.
No.
And they're not even going to tell anyone.
Because we all respect each other. The other day, I got my first collar choke, and I put it on. And the reason why that was significant was because I went into that belt, and that was what I was going for. So it wasn't a luck thing. I was working it. I was trying to get that choke. And I got the choke. And then afterwards, when he tapped, I got up and I was like, thank you, brother. Every part of me wanted to go, yes, I got it. But obviously you can't, right? So you got to be respectful. I was like, thank you, man. He had no idea that meant the world to me. He probably didn't even know that was my first choke. He probably didn't know that. He didn't know any of it. It doesn't matter, because everyone in there you're under this guise of respect. Everyone goes in there. One of the things I love about it as well is that the guy that runs it, Mark, and these are his words, no dickheads. As soon as he sees someone coming in there who wants to start throwing their weight around, they're gone. He's not having any of it, because he doesn't want all that in the gym. And one of the most powerful experiences that I had, because I was thinking about quitting a couple of weeks ago, 45 years old, keep getting injured, starting to feel a bit old and unflexible. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't have to do this. Just like you just said, I don't have to do this. Why am I doing this? I've got this beautiful life. I need to do all this. Who am I fighting for? Like, what? I'm not in danger. I'm okay. So I started convincing myself. But then my sons got into it. And that is probably one of the most heartwarming things that I've experienced recently, because he's been through his own challenges, and I won't talk about it, but it's been a difficult time for him, and to see him doing that is something that I find hard to put into words. Anyway, we went to a seminar, and I saw these 4 guys get their black belt, and as they were getting their black belts, I looked around the room, and there was a bunch of guys welling up, clapping, and their big smiles on their faces. They were so happy for these lads. And I thought to myself, I got goosebumps now, because I was like, this has got nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. This is the Brotherhood,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just like, guys, when they saw that guy get a black belt, and this is the other thing about jiu-jitsu, you don't just find yourself getting a belt. If you got that belt, you've earned it.
Yeah.
And they all knew that. They all knew that them 4 guys there, they've been passing down their wisdom, they've been giving tips, they've been helping out, they've been encouraging, they've been supporting, they've been bantering, they've been doing all of that. And that's all part of getting your black belt. You know, it's all like being able to show other people how to do it. And when I saw that, I was like, this is what I want to be involved in. I want to be involved in this.
It's that selflessness. It's that the moment you stop looking around to check the coaches watching you get this special grip on, he's not interested in that. He's interested in you actually giving feedback to someone and helping each other and getting there on time, and not having that glint of like, I want to be the best, or I want to be this.
It's all about me.
Yes, like you're a team. You're a team. And there's a quote someone that I connected with a while back said to me, and it's quite powerful, quite impactful the way he said it, because in the environment I've come from and my background, working in an environment many years ago where you're all like competing with each other, maybe to be like the alpha. And he said something that the moment you stop trying to become the alpha, that's when you have like involuntarily become the alpha. And I thought, not that he's applying that to me, but it just made sense that the moment you stop trying so hard to be something, that when you stop trying, that's when you become it.
It's the comparison trap. It's the idea that we look at other people and we judge the way that they are externally. So we see their nice car, we see how well dressed they are, we see how well presented they are, their mask, and we take that and we decide what that means, and we compare it to all the crap that's going on with inside us that we know very, very well. You know, so we're comparing someone else's outside to what we know is going on within us. And it's just, again, it's the ego. It's getting involved and saying, yeah, man.
Thing. It's a powerful thing.
It is. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to get you to stay where you are, because you know how to be there. But I'm miserable. Yeah, but is it miserable? You're all right. Be grateful. That's the other one it does. Be grateful for what you got. You're okay. You're okay. You don't need any more, even though you are, you know, like you said, I know, because you shared with me that you have a wonderful life, that you've got a lovely home and a lovely family and all those things. So waking up this morning and not feeling great, well, there's an element of guilt that comes with that.
It's confusing.
It's like, yeah, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be grateful? What's wrong with me? Oh, listen to what we're doing here. We're getting angry at ourselves because we're not happy. It's like, instead of just saying to ourselves, well, okay, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And it's like, you know, I hear a lot of, even though you've got a great life, you also hear a lot of tolerance going on in your life. You're tolerating certain scenarios in your life, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And that's really hard, especially for
It's working out. It's like I've made sense of the person I want to be and the life I want to have. And in order for me to do that, I've got to work a few things out, because like I've got the responsibility of bringing in the financial needs to maintain the bills and all these kind of things. So it's, for me, that's where the frustration comes in, that I know the changes I need to make, but I'm not able to do that right now. But the acceptance, I feel, is there. So
you can access it by doing what you said earlier.
I know that it's a patience thing for me, because I know that at some point I will get there, and that when I look back, all the dots will be there and I can connect them and make sense of it. And at that point, and I know we should never look into the future and go, when I get there, I'll be happy. But I believe that when we're in the transition phase and we are making big changes, like sometimes there is a case of, yeah, I know where I need to get to. and that's where I am with it. And it's.
But that's how I know that you're a tough guy, because I know what you're capable of. I can see it in you. I know that you could. You don't. I don't worry about it. If I found myself in a situation where I needed to call upon some guys, I'd consider you, even though I haven't known you that long.
No, the reason I start to believe you is because when I see you, I see someone that is tough and like able to endure like the most. I don't know how to explain it, but it's that.
It doesn't feel that way, does it?
I respect what you've been through and how you show up in the way you do. So for someone like you to say that to me, it's like, well, at some point you need to listen to these people, because like I'm so grateful to have people like yourself give me the time of day and jump on the podcast with me and stuff, because that was my dream when I started it, and it took me a long time for people to see what I was doing, and for even people to read the messages on Instagram. Like, that didn't happen for me for a long time, and you took that personally. Or even people that might see it, like it, but then not follow you or something. You're like, well, oh yeah, you like it, but not enough. You've not validated me enough to still want to see more of my posts. It's like it's a mind game.
Yeah, that's the comparison again, man. But this is why I know that you're tough, because you are able to tolerate. You've got that control, even though it's not something you want to control. See how complicated and layered that is? You're in a situation you don't want to be in, which makes you feel like you're being weak. But the fact that you're in that situation, you're tolerating because you've got a higher purpose. You want to look after your family. You want to make sure that you maintain a certain safety and security, which makes perfect sense. You're tolerating a lot of stuff. You're letting things happen to you. And that's the key. You're allowing it. It's not happening to you. You're not helpless. You're tough. You're standing there and going, come on then, keep throwing it at me. And it feels crap, because you know why? And this is the simplest answer I can give you, because it is crap. And that's why it feels like that. And the real way of dealing with it is, okay, I need to feel, because I'm not someone that allows myself to feel because it feels like weakness. So now I'm going to go to the ocean and it's going to batter me for 10 minutes and I'm going to feel way better afterwards. And that's exactly what happens.
You've worked it out. You should be a self-development coach.
Well, I'm working on it.
Oh, that's class. Yeah, no, you're a clever man. You've got a really good way of understanding people in a short period of time. You just said something about listening there. I need to find this. I wrote it down because I listened to a podcast yesterday. Joe Rogan interviewed Bono, and I read Bono's book when I was on holiday. Yeah, Bono from U2, and he's a deep guy, but incredible to listen to. And when you listen to his podcast or read his books, like, his music just becomes this different thing, because it's his biography. And it's him sharing how he feels at different parts of his life through music. And in the podcast, he said this one thing, and I wrote it down, and I thought, I'm going to use that on one of my podcasts. And he said, deep listening is an act of surrender. When you truly listen to somebody else, at that point, it's very little to do with yourself. And this podcast, because I hate when I talk too much on other people's podcasts, but you've got this natural skill that when someone shares something, you're like, no, I'm not just going to move on from that. I want to understand, and I want to add, if I can add some value myself as a coach, I want to do that now, here and now, because you've just said it. So let's go into that now. And you keep doing it in this conversation. I keep trying to prevent it from happening because it's your podcast, but you're so natural at it. But yeah, that listening as an act of surrender.
I've never heard that. It's something that happens very often, right? When I'm doing coaching, is I work with people over 90 minutes, and for a good 60 minutes, I just let them talk. And I'll only really interrupt to ask a question or just to make sure that I've understood something right. So I might just confirm or clarify something just so I don't go off down the wrong road with it. And then at the end, I'll always summarize to make sure that I've understood. And then they'll go, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. How did you know that? I always find it amusing. I'm like, you just told me. And they're like, did I? And what's interesting about it is that when people tell you how they feel, they do it through this lens of judgment. That I know it's stupid, but, and I'm really pissed off at myself for saying this and doing this, and I let that thing happen again. And what I'm doing is I'm taking away all that all that stuff where they're putting themselves down. I'm just taking all that out, and I'm just taking the facts, and I'm writing it down. So you did this, so you did that, so this happened. So am I to understand what you're saying is that you feel like this, and this is, and they go, yeah. And what I've done is I've not made anything up. I've just told them what they've told me, but I've just taken out all of the horrible stuff that they say about themselves, and all of the anxiety, and all of the fortune telling, and all of the stuff that humans do very naturally. And I present it back to them, because the thing that people don't realize is that human beings organize their mind through conversation. So if you don't have the opportunity to talk to somebody else, you don't get that opportunity to organize your mind. People go through this experience quite often where everything feels like it's urgent. Everything feels urgent. Well, that can't be true, can it?
No.
You know, it can't be true, but it feels like that. And it's because you're not giving yourself that opportunity to talk. And a lot of the time, that's because they don't have that. There's always something in the way. So like you might say, why don't you just talk to your missus? Well, she's already stressed. I don't want to pass my problems on to her. Now she's going to be worrying about me. I don't want her to worry about me. She shouldn't worry about me. I'm supposed to be the strong man. I'm supposed to be all that. No, I'm not doing any of that. Oh, and I'm certainly not letting the kids find out. That's a no-no, right? And then you got your mate. He's struggling, so I can't talk to him. He's on top of the world. He won't care. So you know what I mean? You just go around eliminating. So all of a sudden, we end up in the same place, which is I've got no one to talk to.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So then my mind just stays chaos then. You know, so by me giving someone, it's genuinely, honestly, the greatest privilege of my life to sit and listen to. Do you know how much of an incredible currency it is for someone to be vulnerable with you, especially another bloke? Do you know how much of a privilege that genuinely is? Like, because people say vulnerability is always strength. It's not. I don't believe that, because there are people that you'd be vulnerable with. They would use that shit against you.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to do it with the right. Yeah, you've got to do it with the right person. And one of I hope my skills is I help people feel safe.
I can sense that you listen. You've got good intentions, and you, as much as you're a truth seeker for your own life, you're also putting that into your coaching. When you're listening to people, sometimes they might not want to hear your interpretation, but it's always sprinkled with their truth.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
And you've got to be careful.
If I look at people that should be a coach, I'm so happy that you are a coach, because listening to you today, I can see how amazing you are at listening and giving just really beautiful reflections. Man, I reckon we should wrap up on that one and then grab a quick drink and just do another one.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. Yep, definitely.
Do that.